Some men mistake a diner for a circus. They don't order food, they order attention. That night, 4 clowns in button-downs decided their main act would be mocking the waitress. Not for the coffee she poured, not for the service she gave, but for the arms she didn't have. They laughed like hyenas, loud enough for the whole room to hear. She kept her head down, like she'd been forced to do 100 times before, carrying plates with the grace of someone who'd long since learned to work twice as hard with half as much. To them, she was a joke. To Jason Statham, sitting in the corner booth, she was about to be the reason 4 men learned what regret tastes like when it's served hot. Because bullies always think they're writing the script. Until Jason Statham walks in and rewrites the ending. The diner was the kind of place you'd forget 5 minutes after leaving. Cracked vinyl booths, a neon sign buzzing like it was on life support, grease lingering in the air, stitched into every stool cushion and curtain. It was late, past midnight. The crowd was thin, just a handful of truckers, night shift workers, and those 4 suits who thought the world spun for them. Jason sat with his back to the wall, a habit he never broke. His plate was simple: black coffee, bacon, eggs over easy. He wasn't there for company. He wasn't there to be noticed. But the loud voices 3 booths down made that impossible. At first, he tried to ignore them. The waitress, Hannah, according to the faded name tag, was doing her best. She moved quick, efficient, balancing trays and pouring coffee like she'd been born in that uniform. But her missing arm was the only thing those men could see. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them jeered, slapping his empty mug. "How do you clap when the band plays, huh?" The others roared like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. One mimed drumming on the table with one hand, exaggerating it like a cartoon. Jason's eyes flicked up. He didn't move otherwise, not yet. Hannah forced a smile, poured the man's coffee, and whispered a soft, "Here you go." She didn't linger. She couldn't afford to. But the pack smelled blood. "Bet she gets a discount on gloves," another said, and the table shook with laughter. A third leaned over, whispering something Jason couldn't hear, then shouted, "Careful, she might arm wrestle you and win." That one landed harder. Even some of the other customers shifted uncomfortably, but nobody spoke. That was the thing about bullies: they didn't need to be clever. They just needed to be louder than everyone else. Jason took a slow sip of his coffee. The steam curled up past his face. His jaw flexed once, twice. He set the cup down, precise, as if weighing his next move. Hannah kept working, like she always had. But Jason noticed the way her hand trembled when she set down a plate. The way she avoided eye contact with the suits, as if any glance might encourage another round of cruelty. And the way she bit her lip when one of them, accidentally, dropped a fork on the floor, just so she'd have to stoop down and pick it up while they snickered. Jason's fingers drummed once on the table, a rhythm, a decision forming. The loudest one, broad shoulders, slick back hair, the kind of guy who thought a gold watch made him bulletproof, was leaning back in his seat, arms spread wide like he owned the place. "Hey Hannah," he called, grinning, "be honest, do you get half off at the nail salon too?" The table exploded with laughter again, but then silence followed. Not from the men. From Jason. Because that was when he pushed back his chair. The scrape of metal legs on linoleum cut through their noise like a blade. Jason stood, slow, deliberate. He didn't storm over. He didn't rush. He simply walked, each step heavy enough to demand attention. The diner, already quiet, seemed to choke on its own breath. The 4 men looked up. The leader sneered. "What's this, Baldy? You her bodyguard?" Jason stopped at their booth. He didn't smile, he didn't frown, his face was stone. "She's doing her job," he said, voice low, calm, dangerous. "You should try doing yours." They blinked, confused. "Our job," one repeated. "Yeah," Jason said, leaning closer. "Shutting up before I teach you manners." The leader laughed, loud and forced. "What, you think you're some kind of hero?" Jason tilted his head. "No, heroes give warnings, I don't." That was when the tension cracked like ice under weight. The leader pushed his chair back, standing to his full height, trying to match Jason. He puffed his chest, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. That was all Jason needed. He saw the fear before the man even realized it was there. "You don't know who you're messing with," the leader snapped. Jason leaned in, voice dropping lower. "Neither do you." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The diner held its breath. Hannah froze with a tray of coffee in her hand. The other customers watched with wide eyes. Then the leader made the mistake. He smirked and he shoved Jason. It was barely a push, more insult than effort, but Jason didn't budge, not an inch. He simply stared at the hand on his chest, then back at the man. Jason's fist moved once, a blur, a hammer disguised as flesh. The man staggered back into the booth, clutching his gut, air leaving him in a broken gasp. His gold watch clattered against the table. The room went dead silent. Jason straightened his shirt, calm as ever. "That's lesson one," he said softly. The other three clowns scrambled up, half ready to charge, half ready to bolt. Jason turned, eyes locking on each of them in turn. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't have to. His silence was heavier than their bravado. "Sit down," he said finally. And to their own surprise, they did. Hannah's lip trembled. She wasn't used to anyone stepping in, not customers, not coworkers, nobody. Jason met her eyes and gave the smallest nod, like saying, "You're not alone anymore." She set down the tray. "Thank you," she whispered. Jason turned back to his booth. He didn't linger in glory. He didn't need applause. He just picked up his coffee, sat down, and took another sip like nothing had happened. The bullies didn't laugh again that night, not once. But Jason knew something they didn't. This wasn't finished, not yet. Because men like that rarely take humiliation sitting down. And when they came back for round two, he'd be waiting. The diner's neon lights buzzed in the silence after Jason sat back down. The four men stayed hunched over their booth, no longer hyenas, just dogs with their tails tucked. But if there's one thing Jason knew, it's this: humiliation burns hotter than whiskey, and men like that don't just swallow it, they choke on it. So when Jason left a tip by his plate and stood to leave, he didn't even have to glance over his shoulder to know they'd follow. The bell above the diner door jingled when he stepped into the night air. The city hummed around him, sirens in the distance, the faint rumble of a subway under the cracked pavement. His boots hit the sidewalk with a steady rhythm, like a countdown. Behind him, the door jingled again. Laughter returned, but quieter, uglier, the kind that drips venom when it thinks no one's listening. Jason didn't turn, not yet. The alley next to the diner was dark, lit only by a flickering street lamp that couldn't decide if it was alive or dead. Jason walked straight into it, as if he'd picked the stage himself. Sure enough, the footsteps followed. 4 pairs, too loud to be careful, too cocky to care. "Oi," the leader called, his voice strained from the punch still lodged in his ribs. "Where you think you're going, tough guy?" Jason stopped. Slowly he turned, his face in shadow, his eyes catching just enough light to burn. "I was hoping you'd ask." The 4 spread out, blocking the mouth of the alley. They weren't laughing now. They were sneering, trying to pull back control, trying to convince themselves they weren't walking into a mistake. "You embarrassed us in there," one spat. Jason tilted his head. "No, you embarrassed yourselves, I just pointed it out." The leader stepped forward, fists clenched, breath hot with rage. "You think you can hit me and walk away? I'll." Jason cut him off with a glance sharp enough to slice. "You'll what? Tell another joke about a girl who's worked harder in a day than you have in your whole bloody life." The man faltered. His pride wouldn't let him stop, but his courage cracked. So he swung. Jason didn't dodge. He didn't step back. He stepped in. The fist barely cleared the air before Jason's elbow crashed into the man's jaw like a battering ram. Bone met bone, and the leader's legs turned to jelly. The other 3 froze. Then instinct took over. They lunged. Jason moved like a shadow with teeth. The first thug came from the left, telegraphing his punch. Jason caught his wrist midair, twisted, and slammed him face first into the brick wall. Teeth clattered against concrete. The man slid down with a groan, clutching his mouth. The second tried for Jason's ribs with a wild kick. Jason caught his ankle and yanked. Gravity did the rest. The man hit the ground flat on his back, air leaving him in one pitiful wheeze. The third hesitated, a heartbeat too long. Jason's fist found his gut, folding him like cheap paper. Then a knee to the chin snapped him back into the wall, where he slumped next to his buddy. All of it happened in less than 10 seconds. Jason stood over them, breathing steady. 4 men reduced to rubble, sprawled in the alley like trash bags waiting for pickup. The leader tried to crawl, dragging himself toward the mouth of the alley. Jason's boots echoed as he followed, unhurried, inevitable. He crouched beside the man, grabbing a fistful of his shirt. "You remember her name?" Jason asked quietly. The man winced. "WH what?" "The waitress, you remember her name?" Jason's grip tightened. The thug stammered, I don't." Jason slammed him against the wall, hard enough to rattle the bricks. His voice cut like a knife. "It's Hannah, remember it. Because the next time you open your mouth to laugh at her, I'll be there. And it won't be your pride I break." The man's eyes widened. Jason let him go, letting him crumple to the ground like laundry off a line. Jason straightened his jacket, glanced once at the pile of broken arrogance at his feet, and walked back out of the alley. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The diner bell jingled again when he stepped inside. Hannah was still working, though her hands shook as she set down a tray. She looked up, eyes darting past Jason to the empty booth where the four had sat. "They gone?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jason nodded once. "Yeah, they're gone." She swallowed hard. Relief washed over her face, but something else too, gratitude she didn't know how to put into words. "Why'd you do it?" she asked softly. Jason paused, then shrugged, "Because no one else did." He left cash on the counter, more than enough to cover his meal, and headed for the door. Hannah called after him, voice steady now. "Thank you." Jason glanced back, just long enough for the faintest smile to crack his stone face. Then he was gone, swallowed by the night. But the story didn't end there. The next day, word spread, not just through the diner but through the neighborhood. People talked. The waitress with one arm wasn't invisible anymore. The four men who mocked her, they didn't show their faces again. And Jason Statham, the stranger who walked in and rewrote the night, he was just that, a ghost of fists and justice, gone before anyone could ask for more. Because Jason never stayed for applause. He wasn't there for the credit. He was there for the silence. And that night, the only thing louder than the bullies' laughter was how quiet they became when it died.